Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to another episode of David's Divergent Discussions. I'm your host, David Gray Hammond, and today I'm here with Tanya and Charlie, and we're doing a bit of a queer pride special because why not? We should probably throw some autistic pride in there whilst we're at it because it's also autistic pride this month, is it not?
I think that was wasn't it? I don't know. It all just blurs into
I lose track. Once you hit April, it's just so many different prides, and I lose track of which ones are happening.
I think that was 2 months ago, David. I'm not quite like what.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there will be a healthy dose of autistic pride, but yeah. So we'll start with some audio descriptions. So I'm David Gray Hammond. I'm a 30-something-year-old male of Mediterranean descent. I have a beard, purpley grey thick rimmed glasses, a lip piercing, and an ear tunnel. I'm sat in a bedroom which is largely blue next to the notorious bookcase.
That gives me anxiety, that bookcase that wobbles.
Tanya, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my name is Tanya Adkin. I am a female presenting almost 40-year-old woman with shoulder-length blonde hair, big glasses with brown rims. I'm white. I'm wearing a white t-shirt and I am in a room with some diamond wallpaper and a blue wall. I think that's it. You're really detailed with your descriptions. I'm like, what am I supposed to say?
Charlie.
Hi, my name's Charlie Hart. I'm also known as Awesome Charlie on social media. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I don't mind. I am a 40-something female presenting gender non-conforming person with the longish blonde hair. And I'm wearing fluffy rainbow pride ears on a headband. And there's a pan pride flag hanging behind me.
Very good. I think are we all a bit waving the pan pride flag here this evening? I think, yeah. So we've managed to do a queer pride special that's inadvertently all pan people.
Yeah.
But we were going to be joined by Katie and Bobby, but unfortunately they've been unable to join us. I'm sure we will see them on other episodes, no doubt.
Yeah. So, to just explain, it's really, really hot in the UK at the minute, and heat and autistic people, we're not friends.
No, we're not. And in fact, I had quite a popular post on my page the other day because I posted about the fact that the heat is absolutely abhorrent for autistic people, and everyone was like, "Yes." So,
yeah. Not only that, we can feel the atmospheric pressure change when there's a storm closing in as well. I think some of us get headaches with it. Can feel when the air is charged.
Oh, and very helpfully, I think Michelle has said, June is Pride Month. June 18th is Autistic Pride Day. Yeah. So there you go. That solves that question because I was pretty sure it was July, but I wasn't sure if it might have been June for Autistic Pride Day, but we got
on
it.
Sunday.
But this is David's Divergent Discussion, so there will be plenty of talk of not just being queer, but being neurodivergent and queer.
Oh, there will be plenty. Well, I think actually the name, I mean, I don't like, we've never done a live before, have we, Charlie? So I'll have to apologise in advance for the severely ADHD divergence that will happen.
Oh no, I'm well used to that.
Yeah, so I think actually it's quite fun that you've called it David's Divergent Discussions because actually discussions always start on one thing and then diverge in several different ways.
Yeah, they do. But I think if we start on topic and see where we go.
Yeah, and we'll meander and get lost a little and then find the path.
So bring us back.
I figure let's just jump in there with one of the big questions because some people watching this potentially don't realize, but queer experiences are a huge part of the neurodivergent community. And I wondered if either of you might have thoughts on perhaps why there are so many queer people and gender non-conforming people in the autistic and neurodivergent communities?
How deep do we go with this?
We've got time.
Are we at a hold my beer intersection? I mean, there is the obvious, isn't there? There's the obvious that obviously social norms don't actually make any sense to us, really. And it just doesn't. And then there's the kind of double empathy swing as well, because we're not surrounded by openly autistic and authentically autistic unmasked people. So I think from a double empathy perspective, I think what can be really attractive to us in terms of who we might be romantically attracted to or aromantic or whatever, or even connect with, is very few and far between. So that really kind of narrows down your pool, doesn't it, a little bit? So we, on the one hand, we've got, and this is just kind of my hypothesis, but on the one hand, we've got, like, you know, social norms that don't actually make any sense. But on the other hand, we've got a lot of people, we spend a lot of time being awfully lonely and misunderstood because we're not surrounded by people that are either unmasked or openly neurodivergent growing up. And when we come into that kind of like time in our lives, really. So I think that connection also has a lot to do with it as well. And connection, again, is something because we don't feel very safe in the world, that to build trust, we need that relational safety. And we can only really have that with somebody that we're connected to, because actually we can't feel an attraction to somebody that we're not really connected to, if that makes sense. So it goes really deep. And I think, you know, my big thing at the minute is interoception. And I think there's a lot to be said for interoceptive, because we, you know, a lot of us have disorganized interoception as well. So a lot of us don't actually differentiate between platonic love and romantic love, or may not experience romantic love, or may only experience. And it's really bizarre because I think it's only the English language that has only one word for love. But I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. And there's so many different ways that we could go with it in terms of interoception, alexithymia, in terms of not being surrounded by people that we connect to, in terms of double empathy, and then there's the social norm thing on top as well. And then we can get into neuroqueering, but that's just going to be a whole later discussion.
Yeah.
But that's my thoughts on it, rounded up in a succinct way.
Charlie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and linking on from there as well, the interoception, I'll come back to that. But I think it's really, for me, closely intertwined with the undiagnosed autistic experience. I went through life thinking that other people experience the world similar to me, I think, and they likewise. So when I was at school, I just thought everyone found male and female forms equally attractive, and it was only really later on that I realised that mainly girls were getting boyfriends, and I wasn't seeing queer friendship. I had no word for it then, but I didn't know anything other than heteronormative standards really at school. But I did notice, as I got a bit older and noticed cues from my body that I was attracted to people, that I was getting them regardless of gender. And so that's where I think interoception comes into it. If you get a stirring in the loins, so to speak, because you're watching Winona Ryder in Bram Stoker's Dracula, then you think maybe I'm not like everybody else. And yeah, just like with the autistic experience, could be we go through a lot of life with a lot of social issues or a lot of sensory issues in particular, and we don't realize that it's not uncomfortable for everybody, and that our experience isn't the norm. In terms of societal norms, yeah, I mean, I always liked to think that I was a bit of a rebel and that I wasn't just a sheep and going with the crowd. And it kind of felt daring and different and just not Joe Normal to be attracted to anybody I like. And I kind of thought it was edgy and daring when I was in my teens, but then some of the bullies that bullied me for being allegedly square, they bullied me for that instead. So yeah, just blundering through life, being autistic and oblivious, being bi or pan and assuming everyone was when there wasn't. And yeah, it's all wrapped up in the same thing to me.
That's a really interesting point, actually. And I wonder, because that was kind of similar. So I had a similar experience, but not around queerness. And it's kind of linked. So I used to assume that intelligence wasn't what you knew. It was whether or not you could put that into a written format, which everybody expected. Now, if anybody that knows anything about me, I am so ADHD. This is why I write with David a lot. I don't think in words, I think in 5-dimensional pictures and feelings. So it's really hard for me to do that. And it wasn't until pretty recently, wasn't it? I think it's when I knew you really that I actually understood, oh, okay, maybe I'm not stupid. So I wonder if that's the same. People just go around assuming that everybody is attracted to every gender, and that's just not what we do.
Yeah, I kind of felt like being attracted to anybody was the normal default setting in a human, until getting teased by people that were more heteronormative.
To pick up on the normativity thing here, because obviously we've got heteronormativity, same as neuronormativity. You know, they're all forms of normativity. This idea that there is an ideal standard way of being and embodying yourself and behaving. And for me, queerness is about more than who I'm sleeping with. It's about directly subverting expectations of who society wants me to be, and instead being the person who I am or want to be.
Yes.
But for me, being queer means that I'm not restricted by these normative ideas that, you know, a man should only be attracted, that I should perform this weird toxic masculinity where I'm an emotional wall that does nothing but look mean. And to be fair, I can look pretty mean. I'm like 6.5 foot tall. I think Tanya was a little shocked the first time she met me in person.
I'm not that much shorter than you, though.
You were, in fact, shorter than me, though. When you compare me to the other people, I am a human mountain. But no, for me, like, don't get me wrong, my queerness does come into play with the fact that I look at it this way, and I identify as pan, not because I have been attracted to every single gender, but because gender just
makes no sense.
It makes no difference to me. Like it's just a social construct, and for me, I am open to the fact that I could be attracted to anyone, you know, given the right situation.
Yeah, because it's about you. Your sexuality is about you. It's not about the other person.
And certainly, I used to identify as asexual. You know, I didn't realize I was queer until I was heading well towards my 30s. In fact, I was about 29 going on 30. And I finally realized, I went, yeah, this is it. I'm asexual because I don't feel sexual attraction. And then as time went on, I was like, well, actually I do. And then I realized I was pan. And it kind of, that led into a lot of the writing work I've done about the fact that, you know, who we are can change. Our identity doesn't have to be a fixed point. You know, I don't believe that a queer person can become unqueer, but you can be different sorts of queer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, we explore and we discover the various ways that we are queer. And I think, you know, to the point of, you know, why are there so many queer people in the neurodivergent communities? I think, as you and Tanya have both said, we're not bound by these ideas of normal, which I'm really starting to think that normality is some kind of cult. You know, I'm very much the opinion that because we're not bound by these rules of who we should be and how we should carry ourselves throughout society, we are much more free to explore something that everyone should be able to explore.
Yeah.
Yes, I think normality is the absence of any of those endearing and charming quirks. It's quite tragic.
Has anybody ever met an actual normal person though? Because I've not.
No. You've got to look at the standard deviation, haven't you? It's like one of those things. No one's ever average in everything, but if they don't deviate from a standard typical norm by a certain percentage, then they are roughly normal, I guess. But no, I don't. But it could be the circles I move in.
But this is the thing. Normativity tells us that somewhere out there is the perfect normie, and I agree. I don't think they exist.
Who would aspire to that?
We all deviate from normal to some extent in some area. You got to think of that spiky profile. Somewhere in your profile, you are divergent from that concept of perfect normality.
Yes.
And I'm very much on board with Nick Walker's work, and she talks about the fact that neurotypicality is more of a performance, and it looks different from culture to culture.
Yeah.
So in the same way that what might be viewed as neurotypical changes from culture to culture, I also assume that queerness can look different from culture to culture, because there are cultures where being gender non-conforming or not cis-het probably it's far more
normal. Autistic culture.
Yeah.
Autistic
I see a lot of the normal performative dance in my career in HR, because it's a job that attracts a lot of people that are people and have so-called high emotional intelligence. To me, that involves rehearsing a lot of scripts and knowing how to say the right thing at the right time, how to be diplomatic, manipulative even at times. But it is a scripted performance. And when you actually get close to HR colleagues, they're as quirky as anybody else.
Yeah. I want to highlight this comment, actually. If everyone was normal, life would be boring. Could you imagine a world full of normal people? Nothing would ever happen.
No, they'd be like non-playable characters in a game, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
My daughter Jess, who's not conforming in any way at all, she says that normal is just a mode on Minecraft, and it's not even the best mode.
No.
We have really gone off on a tangent, haven't we?
Yeah, but that's what we do on this.
Just relating to you with your experience through identifying asexual and then pansexual, it's similar to where I've been at with gender, I think. So as a teenager, I had quite short hair, and I've always been really straight up and down. I didn't have tits and hips and things. So I did suffer quite a lot of gender dysphoria because I didn't feel feminine enough. Whereas now in my 40s, I know that I don't give a toss about being a normal feminine woman. Don't particularly identify as a woman, and it doesn't bother me at all if I look like a boy in certain outfits. I'm not bothered. I don't do ladies who lunch. I don't do girls' nights out. I'm far happier in mixed gender company. So it's really changed over the years.
Certainly for me, I have found that as time goes on, I'm becoming less and less attached to the idea of what I should be as a male. Like I do identify as a cisgender male, but every now and then I stop and think, am I really still identifying as that? Because everything about how I'm supposed to be seems...
I have kind of a different take on that. And this is how I experience gender. I don't think gender has got absolutely anything to do with me. I think it's just the way in which people classify me because of society. So if they want to use she, he, they, it pronouns for me, that's more about them than it is me. And that's not invalidating people's experience that do really struggle with gender. But my experience of gender is separate from self, if that makes sense. It's very from self. And I think as well, because I do present in a very feminine way, but that's because I like the element of dressing up. But then, my personality and the way that I deal with things, David will tell you, is probably more masculine than most men.
Same here.
Because it's very straight down the line. So my experience of gender and things like that, would I say I am a woman? I think woman is an abstract concept. This is why I really like the label queer, because I can't separate my gender experience and my sexuality and attraction from the rest of my whole queerness and the way that like I conduct my relationships. Like I'm not monogamous. I don't do monogamy. I think that you can love more than one person in infinite different ways, and that's a really beautiful thing. If I end up being monogamous, it's usually to do with a capacity issue rather than anything else. I'll be honest, because it's overwhelming. But I don't believe that that's just something that you can have with what, you know, love is not pie. You know, you don't run out. Nobody gets a big slice. It's not measured in that way. It's not something that is finite.
I totally agree.
So where for me is, where does one queerness start and another queerness end? And that's why I just generally just go with queer. You know, and, and even like from a sense of my neurology, that's queer. And everything that I do queers the norm. So where do we pick those things apart? Do we need to, do you think?
I don't think we do. I think it's all it's our character and who we are. It's some of our parts which are not distinct from each other. It's like a cocktail. It's all been mixed together. Add a splash of spicy autism and cut through that with some sardonic bitter lemon. I don't know, but yeah, we're a blend of our characteristics, and that's what makes humanity so interesting.
And I think as well, from masking, I've learned that the way I present actually is nothing to do with who I am internally. It's to do with how I would like people to respond to me, if that makes sense. It's like upper tier masking in a way, isn't it? And that's kind of how I am with gender and stuff.
I certainly, for me, I've started experimenting with he, it pronouns in some places. Now, the original place that came from, I was inspired by J. Wade of Queer Cult, and they use they, it pronouns because they identify as human but barely. And that really spoke home to me because for me, I certainly see the separation from the self and how we describe the self. So for me, being human is a socially constructed identity. So all of my identities are effectively just different masks I put on to explain how my relationship with the world and how I want that relationship to go. So for me, using he, it pronouns acknowledges that somewhere in the ether is a singular point that is me, but that really defies description.
Are you sure you've done it for that reason and not just to really confuse your highly dyslexic good friend Tanya?
I mean, that was a bonus. That's definitely a bonus.
Like, damn it, how do I do it?
I really like that. It's a shame it's a bit tarnished for me because I know that sometimes trans and particularly non-binary people get referred to with it pronouns in a bullying way.
Yeah.
One of the landmark cases I read about not long ago that was going on. So there's case law.
I'm certainly of the opinion that if people, especially with it pronouns, people should only have them used if they have specifically requested them. And I've been experimenting with them, and to be honest, because I have been to understand my journey, I grew up in a place called Bognor Regis on the south coast of England, which is like the most normative town in existence. Like, because I was a teenage boy who wore skinny jeans and makeup, I ended up in the back of an ambulance multiple times because people did not take kindly to anyone who did not fit normativity. So for me, I'm really experimenting with the various expressions of who I am now that I'm in a community where it is safe to do so. And I think that's part of the reason why I love the area I'm in now, because I'm in the area of Brighton and it's a very queer area. Don't get me wrong, there are some horrendous bigots in this area. Like, Brighton may have this wonderful reputation. There are some horrible bigots around here. But now that I'm in a physical location and an online location where I feel safe to start exploring, I'm really trying to push the boat out to see what fits and what doesn't. And I think this is something that everyone needs to be able to do, not just neurodivergent people. Everyone needs that opportunity to queer those normative standards. and see what feels right to them.
Yeah, it's really fun to do that. And when we get to, well, I don't think you guys are as old as I am, but when you get to 47 like I am, you just don't care about those things that kids might have picked on you about when you were younger. So yeah, I could use she, her pronouns now, and if I get attacked on social media for it, then I have a good laugh heckling back whoever is mocking me, because I'm comfortable in my skin, and I don't mind if people think I'm weird.
That's the idea. I'd rather be weird than normal. If somebody called me normal, I'd be extremely offended by that.
I would be so offended.
What makes you think I am normal? Like, do I need to do an autism or something? Shall I stim?
Yeah. I think she would suit you as well.
Yeah. But I wondered, just going back to the it pronouns, I wonder if there's an element of reclamation in that.
Yeah, I think there is. Because, I mean, first of all, I want to say what you were saying about gender being separate from your experience of yourself, like that really fits with my experience as well. Because one of the things that I really struggle with is, by identifying as a cisgender man, people have expectations for how I should be, and I don't feel I meet those expectations. Like, just as an example, I'm a very emotional person, and apparently men aren't supposed to be. I don't know who made that rule. I would like to throat punch them, but I don't know who it was. So
hang on a minute, that's a very cisgender thing you just said about violence right there, David.
Yeah, but I embrace the fact that it is my right to bully people who are bigots. So.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Because we talk a lot about, you know, everything is a social construct, etc., etc., and then so this is and this is my PDA thinking, right? So for me, it's like we talk about things that are social construct, but then we take them so personally into our own identity. It's literally an impossible thing to fully embody. You can't fully embody a social construct because it's an entirely separate thing from a person. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so it doesn't make sense that we are kind of, you know, so actually when I explain things like, oh yeah, I'm this or that or the other, it literally is just a shorthand way of this is the category that people put me in.
Yeah, it's like clothing or accessories that you can put on and take off.
Yeah, and Tanya, we got this comment. We got this comment. My experience, they really liked your comment about gender being separate from your sense of self.
Well, of course it is, because social constructs, we really have to, I think as neurodivergent people, and I think as belonging to like marginalized groups, we really have to battle against, like, consciously against really taking that societal poison of norms into our kind of existence, because that's when you get internalized ableism, internalized homophobia, all the rest of it. And I think that we should be conscious that you cannot embody, nobody can embody a societal norm or a social construct. It's impossible. It's ever changing. It's moving. It changes from person to person depending on their experiences and their shared realities. So you can never really know what somebody's idea of a construct is, because it's constructed by their reality. And I understand that I've probably lost a lot of people right now, but we really need to be aware that we don't take that in, because that is something that I fear that you're never going to, it's a battle that you're never going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's weird how we have this sort of essentialism where people are like, well, you're born this way or another, and that's the way you are forever. It's like, no, it's not. Like,
and do you know what I find really bizarre? Like, nobody, and this just speaks into the patriarchy, right? And this again is my very PDA direct way of thinking, right? Everybody's like, oh, you are born this sex with these genitals, so therefore you are that sex. Well, do you know what? Some people are born assigned female at birth, and some people do develop rather small breasts, and then they go and have them enlarged. But nobody is saying to them, that's it, you are born with small tits and you will only ever have small tits. Why? Because obviously it feeds into the whole sexualization and the patriarchy, and it props it up.
And intersex people exist as well.
Yeah, the obsession with people's genitals,
and
things that are sexualized, doesn't apply when it feeds into the male gaze. Is that what we're hearing? Like, hello?
Yeah.
Because I would say, you know, they're talking, you know, there's a big thing about people saying, oh, you know, taking puberty blockers and yada, 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 and all these things that we're doing to kids. But actually, you can go and get a tit job at 16 with parents' permission, and nobody's, you know, you don't get your nose fixed.
If I'm ever unfortunate enough to be asked what's in my pants, I'm just going to tell them chaos. Like,
party. The other thing like that is, you know, these people that are like, oh, I'm trying with your new name and your new pronouns, but I'm old and I've known you a long time and I just don't get it. Well, that person gets married and they're immediately Mrs. They're immediately got a new surname, and everybody, all the older people, are fine with that. They soon remember I'm Mrs. Hart. And
what does me as well is when people are like, oh, you know, well, and because I always say when they talk about like non-binary and stuff, because it's the they them they seem to have issue with, isn't it? I'm like, where is it any skin off your nose? If you can make somebody's life slightly better by changing one word, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Why would you not do that? How does that cost? Well, I'm not doing that. That's like asking me to do something, and I'm just like, how much of an arsehole does one person have to be where changing one tiny thing in order to make somebody's experience and day better is too much?
Yeah.
It's not even as much effort as holding the door open for the person after you.
No, and with regards to, you know, getting people's names right, for example, I saw a thing on Facebook, of course, because that's where I live, and
You live on Facebook.
It said it said something along the lines of you know, names are gifts and it's okay to return them if they don't fit.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I like that. You know, if your name, if your gender identity doesn't fit, that's fine. Find one that does, because I don't see how any reasonable person can want you to force yourself into something that doesn't fit. I mean, you don't buy a pair of jeans, find out they're too small, and go, well, I'll just have to live with it, do you?
I do, because taking them back is just
an
executive functioning task for
Shove them in the wardrobe and forget about them.
There's probably a wider conversation to be had about how many people are using pronouns that don't fit them because they don't have the executive function to tell people to use new ones. But I assume there has to be people out there who have that problem.
So me, I am that person.
I don't have the executive function. I accidentally set a bin on fire the other day because of my executive dysfunction. So it doesn't seem in the realms of the impossible that people just haven't got around to updating their pronouns.
Same. So me. So I'm like, oh, you know, like it should really be like she, they. But then I'm just like, have I really got spoons to do that explaining? No.
Yeah, especially when they're like, oh, it's plural. I phoned the doctor and they're going to phone me back. Yeah, because I don't know the gender of the doctor who's going to phone me back.
Yeah,
they is singular.
Interestingly,
I can explain that till I'm blue in the face and they still think it's a plural.
I happen to have a degree in archaeology, and I can state for a fact now that the singular use of they, them has existed longer than the plural use of they, them. So anyone who wants to say it's a plural, you're wrong. Like, it can be a plural, but that is a younger use of the words than the singular use.
My argument is much more succinct, which is they are my pronouns. Tough shit.
Yeah, that is much more succinct, but I like picking things.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah.
It's nice to, sometimes when you can make them look silly, like the one that tweet from somebody saying, any teacher who teaches my kids the singular use of they, them, they should lose their job. Good
Do you sense the irony in that?
Yeah.
And Bobby's in the comments. I strive to be me, authentically not normal. I like that, because, you know, if we're not normal, then we're just about anything.
Yeah.
And I can deal with that. You know, how do you identify anything and everything everywhere all at once?
Yes. I must watch that film.
Yeah, I keep seeing it, but that's where I got it from. I keep seeing it pop up, and I'm like, I need to watch that, and then I forget.
Yeah,
because I don't have the executive function to plan what I'm going to watch, which is why I've watched the same 3 shows for the last 5 years.
We're just watching Modern Family 3 or 4 episodes a night every night.
People have got sick of me with Modern Family because, I mean, don't get me wrong, Phil is like, he is my neurokin. Like,
I love Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're talking about how the little boy has got ADHD traits,
I love
and
the little boy.
dad is doing them, and no one's noticing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of those tangents, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think they're all coded neurodivergent, aren't they? Every
Yeah,
single one of them.
I'm yet to spot a neurotypical person in Modern Family. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Phil and what's the name? His wife. They're a typical autistic and ADHD relationship, I think.
although, whilst we're on the topic of TV programs, if anyone in the comments can recommend good programs with neurodivergent queer people, that would be very relevant and might help keep us on topic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Where's the neurodivergent queerness? It's everywhere, because neurodivergence is everywhere. And I think we've been coding characters as neurodivergent for a long bloody time, really, actually.
Heartbreak High, Sex Education.
I love
on
both
Netflix.
of them.
I haven't watched Heartbreak High yet. I started it and then I got distracted and forgot it existed. So I need to go back to it. But
there's even an asexual character in Sex Education, and they're really underrepresented on telly.
My personal headcanon that just applies to every single thing that you can watch on a television or film screen is that 99% of the characters are coded neurodivergent or queer, because if you had neurotypical straight people, no one would watch it.
Yeah, but it's also probably that a lot of writers are neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And they write what they know.
Yeah.
Even if they don't know that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Did he ever know?
One thing I have wanted to watch, but I can't find anywhere in the UK to watch it, is Everything's Gonna Be Okay. Apparently that's got really good neurodivergent and queer representation in it.
Now I need to watch all of these things.
Yeah. The problem is I want to watch this. I've wanted to watch this program for so long, but there doesn't appear to be anywhere in the UK where I can find it streaming. And it's really winding me up because I've wanted to watch it for so long and I cannot find anywhere that won't give me a computer virus.
Oh, I watched The Ultimatum, the queer version, Bobby. I loved it. It's a reality TV thing. So The Ultimatum is where there's couples that take their partners onto this reality TV thing, and they give them an ultimatum that they want to get married or they're going to split up, which again is such a heteronormative thing. So it's kind of a bit of an oxymoron. But anyway, stick with me. They do partner swap for 21 days and then see how they feel at the end. And it's just all the drama. It's brilliant. But there's a queer version specifically for female signed at birth. And the whole thing about U-hauling and stuff like that is just, it's so true.
Oh, I'm going to check that out.
Has anyone heard of this show, Never Have I Ever? Or is it a film? I don't know.
Don't know.
But I'm going to have to start Googling a lot of these because...
I think that's a Netflix one as well. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Okay. But, yeah, we should probably talk about neuroqueer theory a little bit, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about this, so I'm keen to learn more.
David's just about to launch into a monologue. Go, David. You've waited all your life for this very moment.
Neuroqueer theory comes from queer theory, and it's the idea that you have neuronormativity, these ideal ways of embodying your neurology, of behaving and really anything to do with the way you think, process the world, the way your body-mind relates to the world, the way people relate to your body-mind. So that's neuronormativity, is this idea that there is this perfect standard of brain. But neuroqueer theory, much like queer theory, invites us to subvert those expectations. So one thing people don't realize about neuroqueer theory is it's not solely about the intersection between neurology and queerness. So you can be neurodivergent and queer, but neuroqueer is not really a noun, it's a verb. So when you neuroqueer, you are subverting expectation. You are trying something different with your body-mind, as Nick Walker would put it. And really what we're talking about here is it goes really far. So a neurotypical person could, through acts of neuroqueering, make themselves neurodivergent. So some people have neuroqueered through intense forms of meditation. Some people have neuroqueered through psychedelic use. Some people neuroqueer through other means, not chemical or meditation. But it's really interesting because it takes that whole idea of people who are born neurotypical being neurotypical forever and says, well, no.
Yeah,
The only
we
real
could
rule
cure
that,
them.
yeah, we can cure the neurotypicals. The only real rule that exists for it is that you can't unqueer a queer mind. So you can take a queer mind, and if you try to make it less queer, what you will actually do is traumatize it into being more queer. And I think that's a really important concept because I think it speaks volumes of certain therapies that I'm not going to name because they don't deserve airtime. But there are various therapies in the world that seek to take neurologically queer or genderqueer or sexually queer people and make them less queer, and they just don't work. They, in some way, they are going to queer you further. And this is the thing: is trauma can queer a person. It may not be into something that they want to be, but it's what happens. And so neuroqueer theory is really about unlocking the infinite potential of the human mind and the way it relates to the world around it. So it's a very, very broad theory in a
It
sense.
sounds very freeing, like
It
breaking the
is, but
mold.
I always describe it as liberational. It liberates us from normativity. And I mean, I could go on about this for hours. I won't. I did do a podcast episode with Nick Walker herself on neuroqueer theory. Very good episode. Please go back and check it out. It's on YouTube and Spotify and various other places. And and Bobby has added, trying to normalize a neuroqueer brain is abuse. There, I said it for you.
Yeah.
There you go. Cut to the chase. Neuroqueer theory, a lot of people do misunderstand it as being solely about the intersection between neurodivergence and sexuality, but it is way broader than that. And that comes back to that point I made about queerness isn't just about who you're having sex with.
So we're talking about queering in the kind of dictionary term. So anything that is odd or not normal or subverting or is queer. So things are queer, so we're looking at it from a neuroqueer. So if your brain, for whatever way, it is different, it is queer, you are neuroqueer, and you can do acts of neuroqueering,
Yeah, and Remy Yergo, they talk in their book Authoring Autism about neurological queerness rather than neuroqueerness.
Yes.
And Remy Yergo, I know, was involved in the conceptualization of neuroqueer theory. So definitely, two books that are worth reading if you're interested in neuroqueer theory is Nick Walker's Neuroqueer Heresies and Remy Yergo's Authoring Autism. Although I will warn you, Authoring Autism is a lot more heavy going than Nick Walker's Neuroqueer Heresies because Remy Yergo is a rhetorician. So they study rhetoric and it's really quite heavy going.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I'm quite
struggle to
dyslexic
finish any
and
kind
I
of
have to
book.
read it in small sections.
So
Yeah.
I just get David to read them for me and then give me the headlines.
Yeah. I'm going to listen to the Spotify podcast with Nick Walker and yourself, definitely.
Yeah.
I've got about 5 books I've started and not finished, even if I'm really enjoying them.
At any given moment, I've got about 5 books on the go because I can't concentrate on one book at a time. I have to hop between them.
Do you sometimes think you've read a page and then realise it hasn't sunk in and you have to start the page again? Because I'm doing that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's Bobby's put the link to Neuroqueer Heresies on Amazon in the comments, so make sure you check that out.
Where does queerness start and end? Actually, everybody's queer. It's just those that haven't accepted it yet.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is naturally typical.
No. And I think that's what Nick Walker talks a lot about in neuroqueer theory, that actually with neurotypicality being an act, nobody can fully embody that construct, which we've talked about previously. It's just there are those that accept their queerness openly and lean into it more than others. And you know, I actually think if we're looking at terms of like neurodiversity, there are more neurodivergent people than there are more neurotypical people.
I agree.
But people just, and if we're looking at the performative aspect of it and the way in which we live, it's kind of sad because there are so many people striving for this active, unachievable neurotypicality, this kind of unachievable benchmark, when actually, and they're all looking down on everybody else that isn't performing neurotypicality.
Absolutely.
Who's happier?
I know families where they might have one or two autistic or ADHD diagnosis, usually the kids. The whole family are neurodivergent because it doesn't come from nowhere and you can see the recognizable traits. But they're still enforcing standards like you must sit up at the dinner table and not leave until everyone's finished and that kind of thing. My wedding, my second wedding to my husband Si, who I'm with now, we had 3 young kids and one of them was a toddler and the elder 2 were pretty hyperactive. So we wanted them to have as much as they wanted of their meal and then run off and play in the garden while the adults carried on with speeches and sit down formal meals as much as they could stand. And my husband's grandmother was horrified because she would have disciplined that out of them, out of her kids and their kids' kids. But to me, why make a child sit and be miserable and uncomfortable when they could be playing in the sunshine?
And that goes back into neuroqueer theory, because actually what we're saying is what was happening there is they were trying to unqueer a queer mind.
Yeah.
But actually all they did was cause it trauma, which is further queering it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they did go and play in the garden, then my son was lobbing rocks into a fish pond and all sorts. But I think if they'd just been allowed to leave and play without any judgment, it would be different.
Yeah.
There's a really lovely comment here from Carly, and it says, "When I got confirmation that I'm autistic last month, I felt as if a heavy weight of self-condemnation was lifted from my shoulders, and I felt free to appreciate my queerness." And I think this really comes back to the, you know, why are there so many queer people in neurodivergent communities? Because we let people be themselves.
One of the first things I did after my autism diagnosis was go to the playground and swing on a swing for as long as I liked, enjoying the vestibular swing and the changing scenery and thinking, there's reasons that I enjoy sensory things like this and I'm going to bloody well enjoy them. Autistic joy.
You know, I think, you know, the overarching theme this evening has been that, you know, when it comes to queerness, you can be queer in just about everything, not just the bedroom.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't know things that I don't do. Like, what part of my existence is not queer? That's probably a harder question.
Yeah. And certainly, I can't think of any part of me that's not queer.
If you do find anything, you can always work on it, though.
It's okay. We can fix it if we find anything.
Sorry, if I find something distinctly not queer, I'll be sure to queer it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so those pronouns, get in there with a dash it.
Yeah, but
I love it.
I think we're getting close to the end. So I thought to finish up, queer pride as a term, I'd be interested in what it means to people. For me, certainly, it's not necessarily about pride in the weird biblical sense that people seem to interpret it. For me, it's that refusal to be ashamed. And I wondered what, you know, the two of you thought about the term pride. Not even necessarily just about queer pride. You know, we've got autistic pride this month as well, as we've discovered.
I think it's really, for me, pride events are, while they can become something and everything, but I think it's always remembering that there is a huge amount of privilege in being able to be openly queer. You know, it just is. And I think we have to remember the shoulders of the people in all forms of queerness that came before us that didn't have that privilege. And also there'll be people that come after us that we're building for. And it's just about that constant evolution forward to push the realms of what is normality for me. And for me, it's remembering the historical context, because it wasn't that long ago. I mean, autistic people are still being incarcerated. Autistic people are still being electric shocked. You know, there's still gay conversion therapy. We're still illegal in Egypt, Russia, Dubai. We're still all of those things. And
not being burned at the stake anymore, though. Switches.
We are in certain places, and I think it's holding on to while we're coming a long way, there is further to go, and just remembering the context of that. So yes, it's great to be like, woohoo, we're proud with this, with that, with the other, but it's not forgetting where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, I think.
Yes.
It was a really long, sorry.
To me, this is really similar to when we were sitting here with Fergus and Katie on Weird Pride Day, asking pretty much the same question with pretty much the same answer, which just reinforces to me how much the behavioural aspects and the sexuality and gender and it's all one thing, isn't it? It's just breaking conformity and saying, sod you, if you don't like it, I'm not hurting you. I'm going to be myself, and like it or lump it. And
pride is a protest.
Yeah, and I have to do that. Not only because it feels great that I can, and that I don't care who judges me for it, and I can shrug off any bullying, but I feel I have to because the younger generation, who don't usually have such a thick skin, they do need visible, positive role models showing them that it's okay to have these characteristics.
I agree. Well, thank you very much for both coming on this evening.
I am melting. I am literally.
Yeah, it is roasting hot here as well. Thank you so much, though. It's been a really good episode. This has been David's Divergent Discussions. I've been your host, David Gray Hammond, and I have been here with Tanya and Charlie. And this is your reminder that Pride is a protest, and most of our civil rights were started by queer people of colour. So do enjoy that fun fact, and I will catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.